Hello, welcome to Elite Chess Coach. Dion Gorodema here. Today we are going to move on to the openings and we are going to learn the basic rules that you must follow in the opening. These rules are very important, so you need to pay attention. We are going to cover three main points, which is the center, development, and king safety. These are the three things that you need to focus on when you start the game of chess at the beginning. They are very important. So what is the center? The center is these four squares in the middle of the board. The E4 square, the D4 square, E5 and D5. Now, this part of the board is very important in the opening, in the middle game and even in the end game, because the person who controls the center can move from one side to the other. If you are strong in the center, you can easily move to the right and to the left. You can move without any problems because you have a lot of advantage here. So I'll show you a small explanation to make my case about the center. If you put this knight here, notice what happens. The knight controls potentially four squares because we know the knight moves in an L shape, so it can only potentially go to these four squares. Just a simple illustration. Now we move the knight into the center. Notice what changes. Not that arrow. There we go. Right? Now the knight number of squares that it can potentially move to is multiplied by 2. So this is a very simple illustration to make a case for the center. And especially the knight must move towards the center because the knight on the edge is grim. So let us begin. You notice one thing that is important is the pawns. They limit the movement of your other pieces. The pieces behind the pawns, the rooks, knights, and the queen and king. Only the knight actually can move right at the beginning. The knights are the only two pieces behind the pawns that can move. So you firstly want to move at least one pawn in the center. So these are the central pawns that are found on the central squares, the E and the D lines. So you want to move at least one of them right into the center so that you control the center and you open up lines for your pieces. For instance, after E4, this is a very good move and one of the most popular moves, the most popular move in chess that is played at the beginning of the game. Suddenly the queen and the bishop have a chance to move. Even the king, as strange as it seems, can move now because the restriction has been removed. Because our pawns, they limit our other pieces. They block diagonals and lines. But one thing you must know, the pawn must not be moved carelessly because the pawn cannot go back. So you only want to move central pawns when it is necessary. What is most important is to move pieces because pieces control more squares than the pawns and they can attack the opponent's other pieces much more effectively. The pawns cannot go back. When the pawns move forward, they create weaknesses. So this is a good move at the beginning. This is a bad move. It breaks the rule of the center. And white continues. You must develop your knights before your bishops because the knight is less active than the bishop. You notice here this bishop already potentially has all of these squares under control. The knight can only control these two squares in its own camp, but the bishop is already aiming into the opponent's camp. So the knight must move before the bishop towards the center. And then black continues by playing again another bad move, moving away from the center. White plays his bishop into the center. Now we are going to cover king safety after this, which is what has happened now. The bishop has moved out, and now the king is able to castle. The bishop attacks a weak square on f7 because this is a weak square because the king is defending it. It's a weak pawn. Anything that is defended by a king is always a weak space because the king is the most important piece on the chessboard. The reason you are playing chess is to checkmate the opponent's king. So the king must be kept safe at all times. That's why white is doing very well. Black continues here again with a bad move. White finishes his king safety by performing what we call castling. The king is now safe in the corner, protected by the three pawns and the knight here, like this. So you notice your king is nicely tucked away. So here this is how you need to play in the opening. Very simple, very practical. Focus on controlling the center, focus on developing your pieces, and focus on king safety. Castle your king as soon as possible. When you have the chance to castle, do it, because the king has to be kept safe. Black will continue playing bad moves. White will play his knight into the center. Black continues to play bad moves, and white plays in the center. And now, when black finally tries to move into the center, white can easily chase the piece away. This is the importance of the center. When you control the center, you can chase the opponent's piece away, because you notice now this square is not accessible to the knight, because these two pieces are attacking that same square, and only the bishop defends the knight. So this is why it is important to start chess by focusing on these three things. You must control the center. Move at least one pawn in the center. You need to develop your pieces. Get the pieces behind the pawns out. You need to move the 1 or 2 pawns in the opening. Primarily the 2 central pawns. Any other pawns you want to keep them where they are, because if you make poor moves you can lose. For instance, I'll give you an illustration. If white starts with this move, right, it's a bad move. It doesn't control the center. It's a terrible move. And black plays e5, follows the rule of the center, opens lines for his queen and bishop, and white plays pawn to f3. Black will celebrate a quick victory by playing queen to h4, checkmate. The king is under attack. It will be captured if it doesn't move away. It cannot run away. None of its pieces can protect it. They cannot get in the way of the attack. The king cannot move anywhere else. The game is over after 2 moves only. Checkmate. Which shows the pawns must not be moved carelessly, because they create serious weaknesses that cannot be fixed again, because the pawn can never go back. So you must not move pawns on the wings carelessly. Focus on moving central pawns, because what you want is to control the center. This is another way to start. d4, and black will play d5, knight f3, knight to f6, bishop to f4, e6, e3, bishop e7, bishop to g3, castles, castles. Both sides are following the rule of the center and king safety and piece development. Now black is down in development because his 2 pieces are still behind here. And this is another last important thing, is in the opening you need to develop your pieces with time. You must be very quick by getting your pieces out. You mustn't waste time lingering around, because if you're slow in development you can lose the game very quickly, and your pieces won't be able to defend the onslaught of the opponent, because it is well known the person who doesn't develop pieces will lose the game. We'll quickly see one position here as an example, and then we'll summarize. e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to f6, knight takes e5, knight to c6, knight takes c6, d takes c6, and now white is currently has no pieces developed. There's no pieces developed, and black has a knight developed. White has moved the same piece more than once. This is another rule that works with time. Don't move the same piece twice unless it is absolutely forced to. He has moved his knight 1, 2, 3 times, and none of his other pieces have been able to move. And he plays d3 here. Black plays bishop to c5. White plays a bad move, bishop to g5. What rule is he breaking? Yes, that is correct. He's breaking the rule that you must move knights before bishops, because the knight is more passive than the bishop. So here black comes up with this creative move. Knight takes e4. White celebrates winning a queen, but sadly suffers loss quickly, because the king is the most important piece on the board. Checkmate, the game is over, because white is way behind in development. He has only 1 piece developed. Black had all of his pieces developed, and he was ready to castle to protect his king also. White king is stuck in the center, and the game is over. So that is it for this tutorial. We are going to be transitioning into the middle games in our next lessons, and we'll be focusing on that from now on, and we'll look at tactics and ways to think and things to plan in different positions. So I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorials. One last quick quiz question. What are the 3 things you need to do in the opening? Correct. You need to control the center, you need to develop your pieces, and you need to keep your king safe. King safety. Thank you very much, and as always, keep chessing. Bye for now.